The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people had looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. When they finally reached the stars in the year 2247, they found the answer. They were not alone, and they were very, very small. The Volari Dominion was the first to make contact. Their ships appeared above Earth like mountains floating in space. Each vessel was larger than any city humanity had ever built. The Volari themselves were tall and graceful, with skin like polished silver and eyes that seemed to look through everything they saw. They smiled at the humans and called them young ones in voices that sounded like music. The trade agreements came quickly. Humanity would provide minerals, water, and labor. The Volari would provide protection and guidance. It seemed fair at the time. It always seemed fair at the time. Admiral Grace Holland remembered watching those first contact videos as a child. She remembered how her grandfather had smiled and said that humanity had finally found its place among the stars. Now, 50 years later, she stood on the observation deck of the ESS Tranquility and wondered what her grandfather would think of that place. The Tranquility was humanity's finest vessel. It was beautiful and fast and completely harmless. Like everything else humanity showed to the galaxy, it was designed to look impressive without being threatening. The perfect diplomatic ship for the perfect diplomatic species. "Admiral," said Commander Pete Lawson, stepping onto the observation deck. He was a young man with kind eyes and a voice that made everyone trust him. That was why he was perfect for his job. "We have another message from the Volari High Council." Grace did not turn around. She kept her eyes on the stars. "What do they want this time?" "They want us to withdraw from the Kepler sector. All mining operations must stop within 30 days. "What reason did they give?" Pete paused. Grace could hear him trying to find the right words. "They say our mining equipment creates vibrations that disturb their sacred meditation frequencies. The Kepler sector is apparently holy ground." Grace almost smiled. The Kepler sector was 300 light-years from the nearest Volari world. There was nothing holy about it except the valuable minerals that human miners had discovered last year. But she had learned long ago that logic did not matter when dealing with the Volari. "Begin withdrawal procedures," she said quietly. "We will find minerals elsewhere, Admiral." Pete's voice was careful. "That is our 5th withdrawal this year. The crew is starting to ask questions. They want to know why we always back down." Grace finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were tired, but there was something else in them too. Something that Pete could not quite understand. "Tell them it is our job to keep the peace," she said. "Tell them that patience is a virtue. Tell them whatever they need to hear." On Earth, President Daniel Carter was giving the same speech he gave every year. He stood before the United Nations Assembly and spoke of cooperation, of understanding, of patience. His voice was warm and friendly, like a teacher explaining something simple to young children. "The galaxy is vast," he said, "and we are still learning our place in it. The Volari, the Krath, the Sinari, these civilizations have existed for millions of years. They have wisdom we cannot imagine. Our role is to listen, to learn, and to grow." The assembly applauded. They always applauded. In the shadows at the back of the room, a woman named Lisa Monroe watched the speech without expression. She was plain-looking, the kind of person you would forget the moment she left the room. That was exactly how she wanted it. "Another beautiful performance," said the man beside her. His name was Sam Gray, and he had the same forgettable face. They both worked for a department that did not officially exist. The Department of Contingent Futures. "He believes every word," Lisa said. "That is what makes him perfect for the job. And when the time comes, he will learn the truth. They all will." Sam looked at her. "The Krath just doubled their tribute demands. The Sinari are making noises about the Sol system. How much longer can we keep this up?" Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "As long as we need to. 300 years of patience, Sam. We did not come this far to rush at the end." Across the galaxy, the alien empires went about their business without concern. The Krath Collective was a race of hunters, tall and muscular, with skin like dark leather and teeth designed for tearing flesh. They believed that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. Humanity served very well. Every year, human ships delivered tribute to the Krath homeworld. Food, technology, resources, whatever the Krath demanded. The human captains smiled and bowed and thanked the Krath for their protection. The Krath laughed at them and took everything they wanted. The Scenari Empire was different, but no better. They were beautiful in a terrible way, with serpentine bodies and faces that could charm or terrify with equal ease. They had built their empire on slavery. They saw humanity as just another species to be collected. 17 human colony worlds now flew Scenari flags. The colonists had been relocated to wherever the Scenari chose to put them. When Earth's diplomats protested, the Scenari Empress had laughed and asked what they planned to do about it. Nothing. Earth had done nothing. Earth always did nothing. On a moon orbiting Jupiter, far from any alien eyes, a door opened in the side of a mountain that should have been solid rock. A woman in a military uniform stepped through and looked up at what lay inside. The cavern stretched for miles. And it was full of ships, not the harmless vessels that humanity showed to the galaxy. These were warships, black and angular and covered in weapons that alien science could not explain. Thousands of them, waiting in silence like sleeping predators. The woman checked her datapad and nodded. Production was on schedule. Another 500 ships would be ready by the end of the month. 300 years of building. 300 years of hiding. 300 years of smiling at aliens who thought they were masters of the universe. The woman thought about the Valari and their sacred meditation frequencies. She thought about the Krath and their tribute demands. She thought about the Scenari and their stolen colonies. Not much longer now, she whispered to the waiting ships. Not much longer at all. In the darkness of the cavern, the weapon systems hummed quietly, patient as the humans who had built them, waiting for the day when patience would no longer be necessary. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. And that was exactly how humanity wanted it. The attack came on a Tuesday. New Eden was humanity's largest colony world. 12 million people lived there, in cities built around crystal lakes and mountains that touched the clouds. Children played in parks. Families ate dinner together. Old men sat on porches and watched the sun set over purple forests. Then the sky turned. Dark Valari warships dropped out of hyperspace like stones falling into water. There were hundreds of them, each one bristling with weapons that could turn cities into ash. They blocked out the stars and cast shadows over the entire planet. On the lead ship, Executor Thrin stood before a window and looked down at New Eden with cold satisfaction. He was old for a Valari, his silver skin marked with the scars of 1,000 battles. He had conquered worlds before. This would be no different. "Open a channel," he commanded. "Let the humans know what is coming." His voice boomed across New Eden, reaching every home and every street. "Humans, your presence in this sector has become intolerable. Your existence offends the Valari Dominion. You have one standard rotation to evacuate this world. Any who remain will be considered hostile and will be destroyed." On Earth, the news spread like fire. People crowded around screens and watched the Valari fleet in horror. Some cried. Some prayed. Some simply stared, unable to believe what they were seeing, in the presidential palace. Daniel Carter paced back and forth while his advisors shouted over each other. Everyone had a different opinion. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to appeal to other alien races for help. Some wanted to surrender immediately. "There must be something we can do," Carter said. "We cannot just let them kill 12 million people." "What do you suggest?" asked his Secretary of Defense, a tired woman named Martha Webb. "Our fleet cannot fight them. We have 300 ships. They have thousands. We have cargo vessels. They have warships, and we negotiate. We offer them whatever they want." "They do not want anything except to see us broken," Martha said. "This is not about resources or territory. This is about showing the galaxy what happens to species who forget their place." The room fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a bunker that appeared on no official map, Lisa Monroe convened an emergency meeting. The room was small and plain, lit by harsh white lights. Around the table sat 12 people, each one representing a different piece of humanity's greatest secret. "It is time," Lisa said simply. "Are you certain?" asked Admiral Grace Holland, her face appearing on a screen. "Once we do this, there is no going back. The Valari are about to murder 12 million people. If that is not the right time, then when is?" Grace nodded slowly. "I always knew this day would come. I just hoped we would have more time." "We have had 300 years," Lisa said. "That will have to be enough." She pressed a button on the table. Somewhere in depths of the Earth's computer networks, files that had been locked for centuries began to move. They traveled to every major government, every military command, every news station on the planet. President Carter was still arguing with his advisors when his personal screen lit up with an incoming priority message. He opened it without thinking. What he saw made him stop breathing. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Project Shepherd." That was the name at the top of the first document. Below it were pages and pages of plans, designs, and reports stretching back 300 years, all classified at the highest level, all hidden from every president until now. "Mr. President." Lisa Monroe's hologram appeared beside him. "I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary." Carter stared at her. "Who are you? What is all this?" "My name is Lisa Monroe. I run the Department of Contingent Futures. And what you are reading is the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy." Now the truth was staggering. For 300 years, humanity had been playing a role. Every surrender, every tribute payment, every humble apology had been a performance. While the public fleet of 300 harmless ships flew missions and signed treaties, a hidden fleet had been growing in secret. Not hundreds of ships, not thousands. 30,000 warships, each one more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human technology had not been stagnant. It had been advancing at incredible speed, hidden in facilities that alien sensors could not detect. Weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Shields that could survive the heat of stars. Engines that made hyperspace look slow and primitive. And soldiers. Millions of soldiers, trained from childhood, enhanced with technology that made them faster and stronger and deadlier than any warrior in the galaxy. "Why?" Carter asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why hide all of this?" "Because power without wisdom is dangerous," Lisa said. 300 years ago, we had the power to fight the Valari, but we did not know them. We did not understand what kind of beings they truly were. So we waited. We watched. We let them show us exactly who they are when they think they have nothing to fear. And now we know. Yes, Mr. President, now we know. The Valari see other species as insects to be crushed. The Krath see them as prey to be hunted. The Cenari see them as slaves to be owned. These are not misunderstandings. This is who they are. Carter looked at the files again. His hands were shaking. "What do you need from me?" "Your authorization to drop the mask. Your permission to show the galaxy what humanity really is." For a long moment, Carter was silent. He thought about the people on New Eden, looking up at the sky and waiting to die. He thought about every insult humanity had swallowed, every injustice they had endured, every time they had smiled and bowed while alien boots pressed down on their necks. Then he thought about what would happen when those aliens discovered the truth. "Do it," he said. Lisa nodded. She turned to face the cameras that were broadcasting to every corner of the planet. "People of Earth," she said, "our long performance is over. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you push humanity too far." And somewhere in the darkness of space, 30,000 warships began to move. Executor Thrin was growing impatient. The deadline was approaching, and the humans were doing nothing. No evacuation ships had launched from New Eden. No desperate messages had been sent begging for mercy. The humans simply sat there, on their planet, waiting. It was annoying. Thrin had destroyed many worlds in his long career, and the victims always behaved the same way. They ran, they cried, they begged. These humans were doing none of those things. Perhaps they are in shock, suggested his second-in-command, a younger Valari named Counselor Vex. Perhaps they cannot believe what is happening. Perhaps they are simply stupid, Thrin replied. It matters not. When the deadline passes, we will burn their cities and scatter their ashes across the stars. That will teach the rest of their species to remember their place. Executor. The communications officer's voice was strange. We are receiving a transmission from the human flagship. On screen, let us hear their pathetic begging. The screen flickered to life, and Admiral Grace Holland appeared. But something about her had changed. The soft diplomatic smile was gone. The apologetic posture had vanished. She stood straight and tall, like a warrior preparing for battle. Her eyes were cold and hard. Executor Thrin, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was iron underneath it. Your demands have been received and considered by the human government. Thrin leaned forward in his chair. And your answer? Have you chosen to crawl away like the insects you are? Our answer is this. Grace paused, and something like a smile touched her lips. But it was not a friendly smile. You have one standard rotation to withdraw your fleet from human space. Any vessels that remain after that time will be destroyed. For a moment, the bridge of Thrin's ship was completely silent. Then Thrin began to laugh. It was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed off the walls. You threaten us? He said between laughs. You, with your handful of cargo ships? You, who have spent 3 centuries bowing and scraping before your betters. What will you fight us with, human? Your trading vessels? Your shuttlecraft? Grace's smile widened. No, Executor. We will fight you with these. She pressed something on her control panel. The main screen of Thrin's bridge split into dozens of smaller images, each one showing a different part of space around New Eden. The stars were moving, no, not the stars. Ships, black ships, emerging from nowhere like ghosts materializing from the darkness. They came from behind moons, from inside asteroid fields, from points in space that Thrin's sensors had said were empty. Thousands of ships, each one sleek and deadly, covered in weapons that glowed with terrible energy. They surrounded the Valari fleet in seconds. Thrin's hundreds of warships were now floating in a cage of human vessels that outnumbered them 10 to 1. Impossible, Thrin whispered. His laughter had died in his throat. Our sensors, they showed nothing. Your sensors showed what we wanted them to show, Grace replied. For 300 years, we have been very careful about what the galaxy sees. Those vessels you see around you? They are our patrol boats. Our actual warships are still waiting for my order to appear. Thrin's crew was beginning to panic. Officers shouted at each other. Alarms blared. The predators had suddenly discovered that they were the prey. You are bluffing, Thrin said, but his voice was uncertain. This is some kind of trick. Would you like another demonstration? Grace asked politely. Look at your homeworld. The screen shifted to show the Valari home system, hundreds of light years away. Above the Valari capital planet, more human ships had appeared. They were larger than the patrol boats, covered in weapons that made Thrin's flagship look like a toy. We have had vessels in position around every Valari world for the past 50 years, Grace continued. Just waiting, watching, learning. Your patrol patterns and your defense codes and the locations of every important building on every important planet. Thrin stared at the screen. His silver skin had gone pale. Your sacred meditation frequencies, Grace said. The real reason we withdrew from the Kepler sector? We were finishing construction on a facility that can create artificial black holes and project them across hundreds of light years. Your homeworld is currently in our targeting range. One word from me, and everything your species has built will be crushed into a point smaller than a grain of sand. On New Eden, the people who had been waiting to die looked up at the sky with new eyes. The Valari ships that had terrified them now seemed small and pathetic. Surrounded by the black shapes of humanity's hidden fleet, the ground began to shake across the planet. Hidden doors opened in mountains and plains and ocean floors. Massive platforms rose from beneath the surface, carrying weapons that made the orbiting fleet look like toys. These were the planetary defense systems, built in secret over generations. powerful enough to destroy anything that threatened human lives. You have 47 minutes, Grace said, looking directly into Thrin's eyes. I suggest you use them to run. Thrin did not argue. He did not threaten. He did not even try to maintain his dignity. He simply turned to his navigation officer and gave the order that no Valari commander had ever given before. Retreat, he said. Full speed. Get us out of here. The Valari fleet fled like animals running from a fire. They jumped into hyperspace so quickly that some ships nearly collided with each other. In minutes, the sky above New Eden was empty except for human vessels. On the surface, 12 million people began to cheer. Admiral Grace. Holland watched the Valari retreat and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. It was not joy exactly, it was relief. After 3 centuries of pretending, of smiling at enemies and swallowing insults, the mask was finally off. Admiral, said Commander Pete Lawson, we are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The Krath are demanding to know what is happening. The scenario threatening war. Everyone wants answers. Grace nodded. Tell them all the same thing. Humanity is done pretending. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to come discuss it with us. She paused, looking out at the stars, make sure they understand one thing clearly. This was just the beginning. What they saw today was us being polite. They really do not want to see what happens when we stop. New. S traveled fast in the galaxy. Within days, every species from the core worlds to the outer rim had heard what happened at New Eden. The story grew with each telling. A Valari fleet of hundreds destroyed by human ships that appeared from nowhere. Weapons that could crack planets. Technology that made the great empires look primitive. Some said it was lies. Some said it was exaggeration. The Krath Collective decided to find out for themselves. The Krath had been taking tribute from humanity for 200 years. Every month, human ships arrived at Krath stations carrying food, minerals, technology, and anything else the Krath demanded. The humans always smiled. They always bowed. They always thanked the Krath for their protection. 3 days after New Eden, the monthly tribute ship arrived at the main Krath collection station. Station Commander Gorth stood at the docking bay, ready to inspect the goods and laugh at the weak humans who brought them. The ship that docked was not a cargo vessel. It was black and angular, covered in weapons that hummed with barely contained power. The door opened, and a single human walked out. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations. I am Ambassador Kevin Blair, he said pleasantly. I am here to discuss some changes to our arrangement. Gorth bared his teeth in what passed for a Krath smile. Changes? What changes can a weak species like yours demand? We are not demanding anything, Kevin said. We are simply informing you that humanity will no longer be paying tribute. In fact, we have calculated the total value of everything we have given you over the past 200 years. We have added interest. And we have decided to collect. Before Gorth could respond, more human ships appeared outside the station. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They surrounded the station and every Krath vessel in the sector. This is robbery, Gorth snarled. The Krath Collective will not stand for this. The Krath Collective, Kevin said calmly, is welcome to try and stop us. But I should warn you, we have similar fleets positioned around every Krath world and every Krath station. If a single Krath ship fires a single weapon, we will consider it an act of war. And I promise you, Commander, you do not want to see how we fight wars. Krath did not fight. They watched in helpless rage as human ships docked with their stations and took back everything humanity had given them. 200 years of tribute collected in a single day, the Cenari Empire responded differently. Empress Valen had ruled for 300 years. She had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. She did not believe in fear, and she did not believe that humans could threaten her empire. This is absurd, she hissed to her council. 17 of their colony worlds belong to us. Their people work in our mines and serve in our houses. We will not be intimidated by tricks and lies, Your Majesty, said one of her advisors nervously. Our scouts have confirmed the human fleet. It is real. It is larger than our entire navy. Then we will build more ships. We will call upon our allies. We will crush these humans and teach them the price of defiance." Before the advisor could respond, a message arrived. It was from Lisa Monroe. "Your Majesty," Lisa's hologram said, "I understand you are upset. Please allow me to explain the situation clearly." "Explain." Valen's serpentine body coiled with anger. "You have committed acts of war against the Scenari Empire. There is nothing to explain. Actually, there is quite a lot to explain. You see, we have not committed any acts of war against you. We have simply begun liberating the worlds you stole from their rightful inhabitants." As Lisa spoke, reports began flooding into the Scenari Command Center. Human ships were appearing above every conquered world in the Empire. Human soldiers were landing, not to fight, but to arm the slaves. Species that had been under Scenari control for centuries were suddenly rising up, carrying weapons that Scenari armor could not stop. "You are helping our slaves rebel." Valen could barely speak through her fury. "This is unprecedented. This is unacceptable. This is justice," Lisa replied simply. 300 years ago, you looked at humanity and saw another species to enslave. You were not wrong about our weaknesses. We were weak, but we used that weakness wisely. We smiled and bowed while we built the power to do what we always wanted to do. And what is that? To make sure no one is ever enslaved again. Valen ended the transmission and immediately ordered her fleet to mobilize. But it was too late. The slaves were already free. The Empire was already burning. On Earth, the reaction was complicated. Many people celebrated in the streets. They had lived their whole lives being told that humanity was weak, that they must accept whatever the aliens did to them. Now, they learned that it was all a lie. They had always been strong. They had simply been waiting. But others were angry. 300 years, shouted protesters outside the United Nations. 300 years of watching our people suffer. We could have stopped it at any time. How many died while we pretended to be weak? President Carter addressed these concerns in a speech that the whole world watched. "I understand your anger," he said. "I share it. When I learned the truth, I asked the same questions you are asking now. Why did we wait? Why did we let so many suffer?" He paused, looking into the cameras. The answer is not simple. 300 years ago, humanity had two choices. We could reveal our strength and fight the galaxy. We probably would have won, but at what cost? Billions would have died. And even if we had built an empire on those deaths, what kind of empire would it have been? Instead, our ancestors chose a different path. They chose to wait, to watch, to learn who our neighbors truly were when they thought they had nothing to fear from us. It was a terrible choice. Good people suffered because of it. I do not ask you to forgive that suffering, but I ask you to understand what we gained. We know now exactly who the Valari are. We know who the Krath are. We know who the Scenari are. We know which species in this galaxy deserve our help and which deserve our judgment. That knowledge cost us 3 centuries of humiliation, but it may save us from millennia of war. He stood straighter, his voice growing stronger. Today, humanity stops pretending. Not because we want revenge, but because the pretending was never the point. We hid our strength until we knew how to use it wisely. Now we know. And I promise you this, the power we have built will never be used to conquer. It will never be used to enslave. It will only be used to ensure that no species, human or otherwise, ever has to bow to tyrants again. The galaxy watched and listened and began to understand something important. Humanity had not just been building ships for 300 years. They had been building something much more powerful. They had been building a purpose. 1 year had passed since New Eden. The galaxy had changed. More in that single year than in the previous. 1,000. The Valari Dominion no longer existed. When humanity revealed its power, the species that the Valari had conquered for millions of years saw their chance. Rebellion spread like wildfire. The once mighty empire crumbled into dozens of smaller nations, each one free for the first time in recorded history. Executor Thrin had been captured trying to flee to the Outer Rim. He was now standing trial before a court made up of every species his people had oppressed. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched as the proud conqueror was forced to answer for his crimes. The Krath Collective had retreated to their core systems. They still sent raiding parties occasionally, old habits being hard to break, but now their victims could fight back. Human weapons and human training had reached every corner of the galaxy. The hunters had become the hunted. The Cenari Empire had collapsed completely. Empress Valen had been overthrown by her own people, who wanted no part of a war with humanity. She now lived in exile on a small moon, surrounded by guards who had once been her slaves. They treated her well, which somehow seemed to hurt her more than cruelty would have. Admiral Grace Holland stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the stars drift past. The ship had been renamed since New Eden. It was now called the S Reckoning, which Grace thought was appropriate. Lisa Monroe stood beside her, looking out at the same stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Grace asked quietly. "All those years of pretending?" Lisa considered the question carefully. "I regret the suffering. Every day I think about the people who died or were enslaved while we waited. I will carry that weight for the rest of my life."
Ow!
"But the waiting itself?" "No, I do not regret that." Lisa turned to look at her old friend. "We could have revealed ourselves at any time. We could have built an empire to rival any in the galaxy. We chose not to. We chose to wait until we understood exactly what kind of power we did not want to become." "Some would say we are still building an empire," Grace said. "Just a gentler one, perhaps. But there is a difference between leading and dominating. Between protecting and controlling. The empires of this galaxy took whatever they wanted because they could. We are offering something different." "What is that?" "A choice. For the first time in galactic history, the weak have a voice. The enslaved have hope. The conquered have a chance to rebuild." Lisa smiled, and for once there was warmth in it. "That is worth 300 years of patience." A message came through the communication system. Ambassador Kevin Blair's face appeared on screen, excited and breathless. "Admiral, Director Monroe, the vote just finished. The Protected Species Act passed. It is now galactic law." Grace raised an eyebrow. "The final count?" "Every signatory species voted yes. Even the Volari remnants. Even the Krath," Lisa laughed softly. "It is amazing how cooperative people become when they realize the alternative." "What are the terms?" "Any civilization that attacks, enslaves, or oppresses species weaker than themselves will face the combined response of every signatory. Human forces will lead, but they will not be alone. Dozens of species have pledged their ships and soldiers to enforce the act." Grace nodded slowly. This had been the goal all along. Not human domination, but human leadership. A galaxy where strength was used to protect rather than destroy. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we do the hard work," Lisa said. "Building is always harder than destroying. We have to help dozens of newly freed species establish governments. We have to prevent the old empires from regrouping. We have to convince the galaxy that we mean what we say, that our power will never be used for conquest. It will take generations." "Yes, it will. But we have time. For the first time in galactic history, the future is not controlled by whoever has the biggest fleet or the cruelest soldiers. It is shaped by ideas, by choices, by the kind of galaxy we want to build." Outside the observation window, a fleet of ships was gathering. They came from dozens of different species, each one bringing their own designs and their own traditions. But they flew in formation with human vessels, united by a common purpose. The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people had looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. Now they knew. They had found monsters and tyrants, cruelty and oppression. They had found a galaxy that respected only strength, so they had become strong. Not to conquer, but to protect. Not to dominate, but to lead. Not to become the monsters they had found, but to show the galaxy that there was another way. Grace thought about the children growing up on Earth today. They would never know what it felt like to bow to alien masters. They would never have to smile at oppressors or swallow their pride to keep the peace. They would grow up in a galaxy where humanity stood tall. Not because they had crushed their enemies, but because they had offered something better than crushing. "We should send a message," Grace said. "To the whole galaxy. Let them know what they can expect from us." Lisa nodded. "What should it say?" Grace considered for a moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, the kind she had not allowed herself for 300 years. "Tell them this. For 3 centuries, humanity pretended to be weak. We bowed and scraped and let you think we were helpless. That time is over. We have revealed our true strength, and it is greater than any empire the galaxy has ever known. But our strength is not a threat. It is a promise. A promise that the age of conquest is over. A promise that the strong will no longer prey on the weak. A promise that every species, no matter how small, will have a voice and a choice. We are humanity. We waited 300 years to stand up. We can wait 300 more to build a galaxy worth living in. If anyone has a problem with that, if anyone wants to return to the old ways of slavery and conquest, we have one last message for them." She paused, looking out at the stars, at the fleet of ships from 100 different worlds, at the future that was finally, truly beginning. "Stop attacking, or we stop pretending to be polite. And trust us, you really do not want to see what that looks like." The message went out across the galaxy. Every species heard it. Every world received it. And for the first time in galactic history, the stars were silent. Not with fear, but with hope. With possibility. With the understanding that things could finally truly change. Humanity had waited 300 years for this moment. They were ready to build something worth the wait. The end.